to do a history of air guns on a video, about an hour and a half, which is what about the length of this, is very difficult. It is a very vast subject. I don't think people realise that in the 17 and early 1800s, the air gun was made as a very, very serious weapon to shoot deer, or to actually shoot people. In the Napoleonic Wars, 1790, the Austrian armies were armed with the air gun. There was a battalion of 4,000 men, mainly snipers, but they were repeating guns, and so they were very much feared. They had no black powder to show where they'd come from. So it's quite a big subject, but with the help of my own collection and a few photographs from some friends, I'd like to give you a rundown of the air gun over the last 250 years. I'd like to say a thank you to Dennis Hiller, David Swan, and all the other people who've helped me get my collection together. Even primitive man used air. I don't know whether they used it for a weapon, but they certainly used it for killing game, birds, etc. This gentleman, rather large fellow he looks, with this enormous 8 and 9 foot blowgun, must have been quite an adversary in his time. He would carry his darts in a wooden container slung around his shoulder, presumably. And we also assume that the blowgun dart would be tipped with some sort of poison, so it made the kill very quick. Here you can see gentlemen experimenting with a rather large ball reservoir there. This particular plate has not been dated, unfortunately, but we think somewhere in the 1600s. This is the oldest gun I've got in my collection. It's enormous, got a 3-foot barrel on it. It's a concealed butt reservoir. It's loaded from the end here. It's so enormous, I'm having to make certain I'm not going to hit anything else in the room. It's a 2-valve, so you've got a valve here where you actually pump the thing up, the gun up, and of course it's got a valve here. Now this would be one of the earliest butt reservoirs, I would think, somewhere around about 1730. This is just a simple, really old-fashioned type flintlock action. It's got the cover for the powder here, black powder. The reason that they used these, of course, was was the easiest type of mechanism they could find. All they had to do is to alter the inside of it so as to hit a release valve. This is the rear of the butt, and the pump was attached to the inside valve there. Now this particular gun is a muzzle loader, and originally had, of course, provision for the ramrod to go underneath. So that's the earliest one I've got. This is my next oldest one. Wolf calls this the primitive? I presume it's because we have no ramrod on it, and the only way to load the gun is to take the barrel out and put it in the end of the barrel, and off you go. Screw it back up again. This is a simple butt reservoir. This one's somewhere around about 1760 or 70, I should think. It's not really well documented anywhere. It has the bypass on the side. That hasn't got a lot to recommend it. The barrel is very short compared with most. So, as I say, not a lot to recommend that one. This is a Studi mine. Now this is one of the few outside lock guns that I've got, as you can see there. This has provisions for a ramrod, because it's not a breech loader. The barrel comes on, the reservoir comes off. This has got just a round barrel of the reservoir, and it's got the wooden butt placed on top of it, something similar to a Britannia. Here's the outside lock mechanism with the spring which pushes it back. It's only an outside lock because it's got the spring on the outside. In actual fact, all the other mechanism, of course, is inside. The other interesting part about this gun is the fact that the barrel here and the mechanism housing here is all in one piece. And then of course you've got this is the release to unscrew the butt reservoir, and this is your bypass for dry firing. This one is almost a standard type butt reservoir. This particular one has got two barrels to it. One with the ramrod on it, presumably that's for shot, and this one here, which has got enormous barrel, as you can see, it's an enormously long barrel, I mean, and of course the rifling is very deep, and there's about 20 lands in it, so they're quite an incredibly manufactured barrel, really. I'd say this is a fairly common sort of action. You can see there the close-up, you've got your hammer, and this is the tap loader. You see the normal sort of tap there. On this side you have your bypass again here. This is the inside mechanism for that type of gun. This is your bypass tube here. This is your very large spring, which actually brings back your hammer there. And you can just see in here, there's the mechanism for hitting this little piece here, which actually goes behind there and drives into the valve down here. It's quite a lot of guns made with this sort of mechanism. This, I must admit, is one of my favourite of the butt reservoirs. Again, as you can see, it's an enormous gun, but it's very, very accurate. I never put much more than about £600 per square inch into these butts. No one really knows what they were meant to be, but that's about maximum, after having tested it, of course. This particular butt has got a lovely reptile skin covering. Quite know what it was, but looks really good. It's also got a very handsome wooden forepiece with a silver on the front. The other odd piece about this gun is that it has a ramrod to it. Now I can only assume that this was made so that you could actually use bullets as well as ball, because obviously you can only get ball into the tap loader here. So if you wanted bullet, which has obviously made it more accurate, you'd have to ram it down the front. This one incidentally has got definitely 22 lands, and it's nearly a half-inch bore. It's quite a big gun. I must admit I was always under the impression that the old smithies were much cleverer than they really were. I mean, this is in actual fact what the butt reservoir, the shaped butt reservoir, looks like underneath the leather. This one has even gone to the stages to have had some soldered spots on it, which obviously where it was leaking. So I'm assuming that all here got filled up with, well, this is filled up with some cloth there, but I presume it's all filled up with cloth, and then the leather sewn over the top of it. This is a wooden butt here, bringing the two pieces together, and of course would make it so that the butt could be shaped. Probably one of the most famous butt reservoirs is the Austrian Army gun. This particular one, type of one I mean really, is started in about 1790. Simple round reservoir, and it was a repeater. This particular one was an army officer's carbine, Austrian Army's carbine, but of course the main feature of these was that they were used by sharpshooters. Was the thing about this particular gun is the fact of this magazine that goes down the side here. Took about 20 bullets. You can see it goes down the cap on the end, and then you tipped the gun up, slid this block across. The bullet would then go into the block, and you just let it go. Spring just brought it back automatically, and it came in line with the barrel, and then you just pulled back the hammer as you would do normally, and you could fire it. Now the point with this one was that the sniper would go up into the trees or wherever he was going with maybe 3 or 4 of these butts hanging around his neck, and of course a pouch full of bullets. And down on the ground somewhere there was quite a few of his fellow soldiers pumping up these reservoirs, and he could go so that he could go up. Now you must remember that this was a really innovation in war, because when you had a black powder gun, straightforward flintlock gun with black powder in it, if you had a sniper up in a tree and he fired, then where he was actually sitting in a tree would be a great mass of black smoke. So it was nothing for the men on the ground. A dozen of them would just shoot at the cloud of black smoke, and of course the sniper didn't stand a chance. But with this, of course, he did. They are quite reasonably loud. They're not as loud as a black powder. They're fairly loud, but of course you can't find out where the sound comes from. And of course there wasn't the black powder. There was the black smoke from the black powder. So of course he had a great advantage. So he had a pretty good chance of getting away with shooting somebody. Now we come to the ball reservoirs. These have been made alongside butt reservoirs for 200 or 300 years now. This is probably best one of my collection actually. It's the George Wallace. It's got an incredibly fine flintlock action on it. This particular gun, I would think, somewhere around about 1820. We're still very confused as to why they should still be using flintlock action into that time. The other guns I showed you, some of them were older even, they still got internal locks. But this one, it's absolutely genuine. It's just that it hasn't got the hole in the from the pan into the barrel. There has supposed to have been air guns made that you can either use powder or air. I personally never seen one, and although it's very difficult to actually mechanically produce something like that. I've got two other ball reservoirs. One's actually got a tap on it, and the other one hasn't. Now you might wonder why people went to air in those days. We're talking, as I say, 1750 through to 1850, about 100 years of good production of air guns. There was others made after 1850, of course, as we all know. But the reason being that they were made mainly for hunting, and a gun with a flintlock action on it, if you went out in weather, bad weather, you had to worry about your powder in the pan being dry, hence the saying, keep your powder dry. If you had a wind, bad wind, it could blow the powder out of the pan as it came over and opened the pan up. So the innovation of an air gun, which you could not only have no problems with that, because you could assure that it was a shot, you got a good shot in every time, but you could repeat on it. Whereas with a flintlock, they were nearly all muzzle loaders. They did make some very odd breech loaders. Weren't terribly successful. They did make some repeating flintlocks with lots of flintlocks along the barrel, and they kept loading them up. But anyway, that was another story. So, taking it all in all, to have an air gun was by far the advantage. So we are now assuming, of course, that these were very expensive guns. You can tell by the engineering in them. The engineering in these compared with the engineering of flintlock, they don't compare, even though they were using some of the same actions. The valving had to be made so that it was airtight. Most of it wasn't, of course, airtight anyway. And so on and so forth. So I think that they made these in different qualities. This is by Lowe of Chester, but I also think that he probably made this one as well, which is an absolutely more or less replica. The ball threads fit, both the ball fit each other. These are all identical shape. The only difference with this one is that it's not a tap loader. I have to load it by the breech. It was a breech loader. So I feel that they were making them in different values, for different values, different quality. Talking of pretty guns and quality, look at this one. This is the outside lock Hanson. It has 3 barrels to it, 2 of which have these tap loaders. The one that's in there, and that one, and the other is a smooth bore for shot. I'm sure that you would have noticed that the strangest one about this, one of the strange things about this gun, is the fact that it has the tap loaders actually on the barrels, not on the gun itself. And there's another strange thing about this gun, is that it has metal to metal valves inside of it. Whilst having a complete outside lock, the outside lock actually moved this portion here inside here, which pulled the valve open in this point here to let the air out. Now in there is a metal to metal, and also here on this side of this valve, of this moving part, is metal to metal. I'm really confused about whether it ever actually held its air for any length of time. Talking again of outside locks and quality, this is the only pistol I've got. This has a butt reservoir which unscrews. Shouldn't think you get more about 4 or 4 shots out of it, but I should think it's quite a useful weapon if you happen to be in a tight spot. This is the close-up of the exterior lock. This one's got it nearly all completely on the outside. This piece here comes forward and it touches this piece here, which actually kicks open the valve, or the piece of metal that goes backwards into the valve, into the rear here. They're all very much on the same sort of basis, really, mechanically. There's all the engraving on the top, rather nice bird on the side, and a dog chasing a hare on the base plate. This is one of my antique guns. This is a buttress butt. I can get it off. Bellows gun. This gun had to be cranked from this point here. An enormous great crank on it. And these 2 bellows, these bellows here opened up one way, one the other way. This, incidentally, is a 2-spring bellows gun. One at the top there and one at the bottom. And it also got a hair trigger on it. There's the hair trigger, there's the set trigger, and that's the hair trigger. And they were never very powerful, I shouldn't think. And of course there's a lot of controversy over these as to whether this gun like this is dated from the original date, or whether it's a reproduction in the mid to late 1800s. This is the catch to open the breech here, and it is breech loading. Unfortunately, I haven't got a rear sight on this one, but it's quite a nice specimen. Paul Giffard, born in 1837, started patenting his compressed air guns in about 1859. So really he is the forerunner of all your modern pneumatic guns. This was considered to be, is considered to be one of his first compressed air guns. Not really certain about that. There's not a lot of history on this particular gun, and there's not a lot of them about, so we can't check it. But it is made in France, and we think that this is for compressed air and not for CO2 as his later guns were made. This gun is a tap loader. You can see here about 2.95, and because the valve is actually in the reservoir here, it had a system, the hammer was pulled back like that, and there's a rod in here which actually goes, the hammer hits and goes through and opens the valve down here. But the crafty part about this is that you could stop the hammer going further forward, therefore reducing the amount of air that you're allowed out of the cylinder here. This is another Giffard. This is one of his production models. This had the easily take offable reservoir like that, and again it had the valve inside this reservoir. It had the name set in the barrel in gold. Nobody would be able to know this other than a Giffard. This particular one was made for shot. Apart from ball, etc., he also supplied little cardboard tubes with shot in, which you just put into this and closed up the, and again had the regulator at the back, just the same as the hammer hit on. Another interesting feature of the Giffard guns was this butt plate with this hot air balloon, of which he was one of the inventors of, apparently. Paul Giffard thought he was going to revolutionise firearms, but unfortunately it didn't work out that way. He thought, and many people did as well, thought that the CO2 was going to be the gun of the future. But they found that it wasn't anywhere near as powerful as they thought it was going to be. In fact, not as powerful as they could get the compressed air guns. So his French production fell off. We're not quite certain why. And then he went to England to make this lovely gun. This has got a very nice hexagon barrel. The sizes of this reservoir vary. I don't know why, but they are definitely different from the French reservoirs. But the beauty of this particular gun is that you pulled this down. This loaded the gun for you, and then you opened the port to put in your pellet. But you had to put the safety back off. It automatically put the safety on for you, so you had to put it off to fire the gun. This is almost identical, this action here, to the modern shotgun. Here you can see a close-up of the tap at the top there, and there's the safety there. Very similar. Had to take it off. to be able to fire the gun. It's always very difficult to know as to actually how you're going to carry on with these type of films. Whether you're going to go straight to the modern, or whether you're going to go on one off to the spring or off to the modern CO2s. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go from the ancient to the modern in one line, which is the pump-up, single pump-up pneumatic, which for all intents and purposes was started by Giffard again. You can see the lovely trigger guard which is on his original pneumatic reservoir gun. This has got an inline pump in it, which of course was followed up by quite a lot of people, and a valve which is what we call a forced shut valve. In other words, it was forced shut with a clip on it, and then when you pulled the trigger, it allowed the air to actually shoot the to open the valve and shoot the pellet forward. This is opposed, of course, to the hammer type, which just banged the valve, and also the automatic setting valve, which some of the modern day Crossmans have got. There's not many actually used with this type of valving. But anyway, this was the first inline pump that was made. One of the amazing things about this gun, I find, is the size of the bore. There it is compared with a 2.2. It gets rather lost. It has a form of tap, as you can see. This was patented in 1862, so it's, you know, it's fairly forward for its age. This is the trigger you had to pull back. You had to pull this back so it engaged in the trigger, and then you pumped it. Then when you just pulled that, this went forward and allowed the valve to open. It wasn't so much of a valve, it was a pad which was just forced into a orifice.